But let's talk a little bit about that when it comes to, I think of Kurt Warner, right? And he openly went on Twitter and talked about Brock Purdy, and Kurt Warner's from a different era where analytics were certainly there. You have to talk about that when you're making your Hall of Fame cases and what have you. But he also pointed out the fact that he saw something that the numbers aren't showing. And we talk about how Purdy's been prior to this Iowa farming situation. He was struggling. So we know the numbers reflect that. So how about analyzing that from that perspective? Because you obviously, or you share the stage or, the studio with pros before. Are they embracing the new analytics, or just, I'm not saying there's a bunch of new analytics, but there's still a field there. They played the game. Are we finding a balance?
I think there's a balance there. And I think a good example, I talked to Steve Smith Sr., who is equal
That's the
parts.
best name drop I've ever had ever.
Thanks, man. I
That's so
appreciate
good.
that.
So good.
But he is equal parts entertaining and informative, and he does understand that part of it, right? But yeah, I had a conversation with him the other day, and he's like, look, it's great to look at some of these metrics and say, like, hey, this guy gets open X% of the time, or he gets this much separation from defenders. But Steve also is like, look, I get to go to these practices and I get to watch guys, and sometimes it is just about the eye test and what you see. And hey, look, maybe a guy is great in practice, right? That every day in practice, he's going out there and killing it. But you also got to keep in mind that he's practicing against the same guys every day. And at some point, it's like, he's like, they practice together. They sit and eat lunch together. He's like, I know you. I know how you're going to react to things. I know what you're going to do on the field. And so maybe I look great against you because I know what you're doing every day, versus when we go out and play another team and I'm not as familiar with their defensive players, am I going to be able to get open the same way? And I think there is that, understanding that the analytics and the numbers do have some merit to them. But I think for a lot of guys who played, there is just something about watching a guy and knowing that that player just has an unknown quantity about them. I mean, look, maybe the best example, right? Tom Brady, famously a 6th round pick, a guy who was good at Michigan, but there was nothing about his college career that suggested he was going to be the greatest quarterback of all time. But it was just a thing about him, whether it was, a little bit of a physical ability, maybe a mental difference that he had over other players, and maybe a little bit of just a good situation that he landed in New England. There were no analytics that told us Tom Brady was going to become, Tom Brady as we know him now.